Well, they say the third time is a charm. Let's try this again. Okay, I've tried to start this, and when I plan out what I'm going to say in the car, it sounds a lot better than um, when I'm sitting here trying to do it. I don't know if something about the camera and me. Not sure. Anyway, this time I'm not going to read a boring story. I am going to tell you guys my story. Since most of you that watch this, your um, family anyway, you know most of my story. But for the rest of you who don't, I'm going to stop working on Tao's story. I think it's going to be called A Soul's Journey, Barb's Story. Tao's will be A Soul's Journey, Tao's Story. Anyway, I was born in the early 60s to someone who was not really equipped to be a mother. Her first child, my oldest brother Cork, was born when she was 15. Even though that's not what they say, I did the math, she was 15. He was a pretty ordinary child. 2 years later, um, she had a child who passed away at, I think, 24 hours old. Carlton died of blood poisoning. But back in the day, they said that, like, if they were a preemie or for any particular reason, I'm not sure, it could have been blood poisoning. 2 years later came my sister Verna, um, exceptional child. Verna, when she was young, probably still is, was telekinetic and just knew things. She was so connected to our mother that she knew conversations. And she just had an innate knowing, and that innate knowing kept most of us kids alive. A year after her came our brother Ralph, who was also exceptional. Although he didn't talk much, he heard and saw things that the adults couldn't hear and see. Then I came along. Abortion was illegal then, and according to my grandmother and a few others, I wasn't her husband's child, so she tried to abort me. She ended up aborting my twin brother, who was my playmate up until I was, I'd say, 2. Verna said she could hear him but not see him. And my brother Ralph could see and hear him, but told me that the adults couldn't. So I guess I frightened her. Um, Abortion was illegal then, and they didn't have ultrasound, so it was okay. But because of that, I was born with a club foot. My first memories, which I was told not to include the hurt part. Well, that's how I found out that who I thought was my father wasn't my father. But anyway, because they couldn't afford a brace for me, I was stubborn enough, and it's stubborn, but it also Goes to show you the power of a mind. Our mother was told that without a brace, I would never learn to walk properly. Because I knew they couldn't afford one and I was determined to walk, I straightened out my own leg. It took a couple years. And up until I was 5 or 6, when I got tired, I would trip over my feet. Hence, my nickname was Boo Boo because my knees were always skinned. Um, but my foot straightened, and today nobody could ever tell that I was ever born with a club foot. 2 years after me, 18 months after me, maybe a little more, came our little sister Carol. Carol, because she grew up with our family, is pretty open minded. She is exceptional in her own right, but she's too mousy, that used to be her nickname, to acknowledge how great she really is. Um, Back to the things a mind can do. When I was around 2, when my little sister was born, I remember I was still dealing with a foot that tripped me up. I grabbed a glass baby food jar because I still liked baby food when our mother was trying to feed our little sister. And I ran into the kitchen and tried to run out the back door, tripped, fell down the basement steps, from what I understand from my older sister, and shredded my right hand. I was born left handed. But I heard the doctor tell our mother that I would never use my right hand again. Now I'm ambidextrous because I was determined to only use my right hand. This caused a problem because when I learned to write, I had a rare form of dyslexia. I wrote from right to left, and I wrote my letters backwards. Everybody ignored it, I guess thinking I just wanted attention until 3rd grade when a teacher told me that's what I was doing. So he would give me 2 tests, 2 papers, sat me in the back of the room with a mirror, told me to do one, and then copy what I saw uh, on the other paper, what I saw in the mirror on the other paper. It took me 2 weeks, and I could do it in my head. I didn't need the mirror anymore. I still can write backwards without thinking about it, but I'm ambidextrous. My left hand handwriting looks like a 3rd grader wrote it, but I am ambidextrous. When I was about 5, oh no, I'm thinking about 7, 6 or 7. I was in an orphanage talking to my little sister. We were all split up in the orphanage. Except I got to stay with my little sister because we were close enough in age. But um, we were learning math, and I told my sister that I don't know why I have to learn math because I probably won't grow up to be an adult. Suddenly, I found myself sitting at a desk looking at names and numbers. I knew I was an adult. To me, I seemed old. And there was a feeling that I couldn't describe as a child. I had never felt before. At the time, my sister asked me when I told her what I saw. She asked me if I was happy, and I said, well, what I felt was kind of a happy, but I know I'm going to need math. When I was 55 years old, I retired from a really good job. I took a temporary job with the agency doing payroll for a company. One evening, I went into work. I sat down at a desk, recognized the names and numbers, and had just been thinking about how content I was in my life. Suddenly, I was back sitting with my sister as a 5-year old, telling her that I'm going to need math. And I was suddenly back 55 years old. Now, when I was young, that was the first time that happened to me, but I have done that several times in my life. Um, some people would say that I jumped to a different timeline. For me, it was my actual future. So I don't know how to explain it. I just know what happened to me. When we went through orphanage. I went through 3 foster homes. One of them was with my little sister. I can't go into detail, but let's just say that I'm not very proud of who I was as a child. And then I was given up for adoption. A gentleman named Hal Jenks started a program for adoptive children. And it was adoptive parents who would take a child for a weekend. Not necessarily the child they were looking for. For instance, my parents were looking for a girl, but took home a little boy for a weekend. Um, I was pretty bitter by this time, and I was very rude to them when they came to pick me up. But wait a minute, I skipped a step. No, I guess I didn't. Okay, so I was rude to Millie and John when they picked me up the first time. It didn't seem to faze them. They seemed to understand. I had an excellent weekend. A couple weekends later, I was going back to their house. I had a good time. They were very sweet people. And then about a month later, or a couple weeks later, Hal Jenks showed up at the cottage at the orphanage where I was staying and asked to see me, and he wanted to walk me to the administration building. I could tell how people were feeling before, but his excitement was he was so excited and so happy that it scared me. I had never felt anything that strongly. When I got to the administration building, Millie and John were sitting in his office. I could feel their feelings, and they were really nervous. The two didn't seem to go. So it scared me. So I was getting ready to run out of there when Millie said, "We would like to know if you would like to come and live with us permanently." I was thinking it was just another foster home. Hal said, "No, they want to adopt you." Suddenly it all made sense. And when I said yes, their nervousness turned to excitement. So all of us were about to jump out of our skins. But I thought it was just strange that I could feel the feelings that strong. So I was adopted by Millie and John. Before I was adopted, I went to a skating rink. And who should I run into? I was 12, but I ran into my 9-year-old sister. So, wait a minute. She would have been 10. I skated with her. Her parents, her adopted parents, were not thrilled. They thought I was going to corrupt her, and I kind of laughed because I was a little bit more innocent than my younger sister. We ended up going to the same high school. My parents and her parents became friends. My older sister, my parents, when I went to live with them permanently, it was Christmas vacation 1974. And my older sister was asked if she would like them to adopt her also. They were willing to do that, and she didn't want to change her name, which was fine. We stayed in contact with her. Then my brother Ralph, his uh, adoption didn't go well, so they contacted my parents because ours went so well. So they thought the two sets of parents could talk and my brother and I could hang out. And we did for quite a while. I was in high school, and so I stayed in contact with my brother. My oldest brother, so that was Carol, Ferna, and Ralph. And then my oldest brother, Kenny Cork, um, ended up working at the same place my younger sister did when I was in college. So she got us together. When I was first adopted, my mother found out where my grandmother was and got us in contact with my grandmother. Through that, I got in contact with the rest of my biological family. The best part was I was adopted by the perfect parents for me. I had forgotten everything that had happened to me beforehand until I turned 18. When I turned 18 and I hated the world, including myself, my mom was there to remind me that it was in the past and that it couldn't hurt me and that I should live in the moment and in the future. She was also a perfect mother because when I came to live with them permanently, I wondered what they did after I went to bed. So I imagined myself standing in the hallway right in the entrance to the living room, looking at them. My mom was in her chair, all sense of decorum gone, her leg up in the chair, sticking up with a nightgown on, nothing on underneath it, um, doing her crossword puzzle in her chair, my father watching the news in his chair. Suddenly, my adopted mom, Millie, lifted her head and said, "Barb, go back to bed. You need your sleep." It shocked me, and I was back in my body instantly. The next morning, she asked me how long I had been doing astral projection. And I said all of my life, but I didn't know that's what I was doing. I thought I was just imagining. So she explained to me what it was. She asked me if I had anything else that I could do. I said, well, when I was little, I used to see somebody that wasn't there, but I don't do that anymore. Then one night, I was lying in bed and I could feel breath on my face when somebody called my name. It was like they were right here and they went, and that scared me. I just pulled the covers over my head. My parents were already in bed, so it had to be after 11. And next morning, I told my mom what had happened. My mom told me to not be afraid. I wasn't when I was a kid. She said they're just people too. Ask them what they want. My mom was assuming that they were ghosts, spirits. Maybe that's what they were. So I asked them what they wanted. Sometimes they just wanted me to let a family relative know that they had passed. Sometimes they just wanted to be acknowledged. Just, I could do things like find, if something was lost, I would see it in my mind and see what was around it so that I could find it. Um, Sometimes I knew things were going to happen a minute or two before they happened. Then one night I was laying in bed and I could hear whispering in a different language in my bathroom, which was, we had one bathroom and it was right next to my room. And I could swear I heard somebody whispering in there, like not in my mind, like I heard voices, but actually in my ear. And then I heard, shh, she'll hear us. That was another time where I just pulled the covers over my head, went to sleep, forgot about it. Um, we all grew up. My mom helped me with things, and my mom used to do past life regression for my cousins and other family members. And I remember there was one where my cousin was going to do a past life regression. Can't remember if it was Bugsy or Kelly. But for 2 days before that, I saw a courtyard in like a castle. And I was present when she did a past life regression for that particular cousin. And the cousin described the courtyard I had been seeing for 2 days. So when my mom was asking her questions and she wasn't sure about them, I was answering them for her. My mom didn't think it was strange. She just thought it was different because that's not, she did automatic writing and things like that. But my mom couldn't tap into other people's past lives 2 days before she was going to ask them to. So, other things that have happened to me, in school, I just knew answers. I knew somebody's name. We had first names up on the board, and I would know a few of the people's last names without ever being told until after. Um, I was in a foster home and used to talk to the shadow on the wall. Okay, I have to go back. When I was young, because I was so shy, had a speech impediment, and was socially inept because all of the adults I knew were either distant or violent, My kindergarten teacher scared the crap out of me by yelling at me the very first day. So I would rather go to the bathroom in my pants than raise my hand. So I was taken to a place where adults very sharply told me, do this, do that, do this, do that. And because that freaked me out, made me shut down, I was diagnosed as, excuse the term, but this was politically correct back in the 60s. I was diagnosed as mentally retarded. By the time I was in first grade, they decided I was not mentally retarded. I was socially retarded. And then when I was 11, and I flunked math because I was obstinate and refused to do things the way the teacher wanted me to do them. So she didn't even grade the paper. I was taken to a psychiatrist who talked to me about the man on the wall and decided to do an IQ test. She did an IQ test on me and my foster father and foster mother. By the way, I had fantastic foster parents. They brought me in for the discussion, the very final discussion. And my foster parents were told if you took his IQ and added half of her IQ, you would get my near genius level, which shocked me. Also, she told them that they should be more open minded. Who's to say there's no such thing as ghosts? When I was adopted, my mother didn't have to be, my mom didn't have to be open minded. Her mind was as open as they come. She used to go to metaphysics classes. She encouraged me to check out other religions. She was fantastic. So I grew up. I learned that telling other people things got me labeled as crazy, scared people away, didn't really bother me. And I heard something the other day on Canada's Got Talent. One of the judges said, if somebody asks you why you're not normal, tell them because you're extraordinary. They're ordinary, you're extraordinary. There's no such thing as normal. My mom used to say that all the time too. There's no such thing as normal. So, where was I going with this? Oh, so a lot of times I hid my true feelings, what I thought, the fact that I knew things about people that I wasn't supposed to know, like the guy in the holey jeans and loafers with no socks, beat up loafers. He looked homeless. And he's in the airport. I'm getting ready to take a flight to Las Vegas to meet my sister. And I knew that man was a doctor. I just knew he was. So the people sitting next to me are complaining about how a homeless person was able to afford a flight. When the man's phone rang and he announced that he was on vacation, that Dr. So and so was supposed to take his patients and not to bother him again. Everyone sitting around me was shocked, except me. Um, I forgot where I was going with this, but I'm just trying to tell my story. Oh, so I marry a man who, well, okay, when I said people are ordinary, my mom used to put it differently. Just tell people you vibrate at a higher level than they do, not to judge. So, um, I marry a man who ignores his gifts because he was raised to be ordinary, trying to fit in. Um, and I used to watch mediums on TV, tarot readers, different things. And my husband asked me, do you really believe in that stuff? And I laughed and said, you're asking me that. He just thought I was crazy, a little different, but he loved me in spite of it. And then one day, his mom had had a stroke. I woke up 2 o'clock in the morning, our time, and saw his mother standing at the foot of the bed smiling. And she had the warmest feeling of peace. It's so hard to describe the unconditional love and the peace that I felt emanating from this woman. And she just smiled and then faded away. I tried to wake up my husband so that he could see it. And by the time I got him awake, she was gone. So I told him, honey, your mom had passed away. And he told me it was a bad dream that I needed to go back to sleep. And I said, no, she passed away. And he asked me how I knew, so I told him. He said, you're crazy. If my mom had passed, my brother, and just then the phone rang. He turned around, he looked at me before he answered the phone, and he said, I hate you. He didn't mean I hate you, he meant I'm scared shitless of you. So it was his brother saying that she had just passed. And when did we think we could get there? Because he'll hold off on the funeral arrangements. It was 3,000 miles away. From then on, he didn't question when I said things, but it did seem to frighten him. Um, when my brother Ralph passed away, before we ended up adopting my brother's 2 children. And our daughter Erica, who at the time was, what would you call it? A certified healthcare. I'm trying to think what my sister used to be called. Patient care tech. She was certified to take care of people. And Ralph had fallen. He was diabetic, blind, had a kidney transplant. So he was on blood thinners and anti-rejection drugs. And he fell down his steps during a low blood sugar. He lived by himself and he broke his back. So he was in the hospital and he was supposed to be released. So Erica was there to take care of him. And I was getting ready for work in Toledo, Ohio, and he was in Fort Wayne, Indiana. They were in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And um, suddenly, Ralph, I couldn't see him, but Ralph was standing next to me. I could feel his presence. I could hear him like you can hear me now. And Ralph said, I just passed away. Erica's going to call you. Tell her you're going to be bringing the paperwork, not to release the body. Um, this is where you put my paperwork. He had his funeral all prearranged. Um, you're going to have to call off from work. You're going to have to call Rick, who's my husband. He gave me a whole laundry list of things to do. And I'm standing there in shock because it had been a long time since I'd actually physically heard somebody like that. So the phone started ringing and I picked it up, and Erica, poor thing, was so distraught. She had watched them work on him and it didn't work. They couldn't bring him back. They had taken him off his blood thinners, and a blood clot had gone through his heart and killed him. He had gone to physical therapy. So I told her what I had to tell her, went and looked for the paperwork, packed a bag. The whole time my brother was talking to me, I called into work, told him I wouldn't be there, what had happened. I took a week off work. Um, and I called my husband. The whole drive to Fort Wayne, my brother kept me calm. At one point, he told me to slow down because if I didn't slow down, I was going to join him and I couldn't. So I slowed down. A pickup truck ran the stop sign at the intersection. He would have hit me driver's side going about 80 miles an hour. Once I got past that intersection, my brother stayed with me and kept telling me not to cry until I got to the hospital. I asked him a few questions then too, like were we right about the afterlife? He told me I have to remember myself. I wasn't allowed to take the easy way out. He told me we were right about some things and we were wrong about other things. Because we used to have all kinds of discussions like, what if God is really an extraterrestrial? Several other things. Um, when I got to the hospital, I pulled in the parking lot and he said, this is where I have to say goodbye. So we said goodbye. And I went up to identify the body. And um, by this time, Erica had left the hospital. We had some family drama earlier when she was younger. So she had foster family. And she had called them and they came to be with her, and I'm so grateful for them. Jeff and Christy handled it well and they were perfect for her. So, um, when they asked me if I wanted to identify or if I wanted to say my goodbyes, I almost said I already did in the car, but it would have sounded funny. So I said yes. Um, that was the strongest I had felt a spirit. So when, oh, there's so many things that I wanted to say, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to arrange all this in the book. There was a time before that happened when I myself was ill. And Rick had taken me to the hospital. This is when the kids were still pretty young. Rick had taken me to the hospital. This was the start of our family drama, too. But he, I was in the emergency room with the light yellow walls, TV going on in the background in the waiting room. And I could hear the TV, but not quite understand what they were saying because it was far enough away. And then suddenly it sounded like the television said, "Oh no, here he comes, and we're going to lose her." And I heard my husband, who I thought was out having a cigarette, he used to smoke back then, say his pet name for me. He just called me babe. And I opened my eyes and I saw the doctor there. And I turned my head toward my husband, and he had been crying. And I didn't understand why. I didn't want to stay to rack up medical bills. They couldn't figure out what's going on with me. So I left. They wanted to keep me overnight for observation, but I left the hospital. That night, I lay in bed and I was walking down a crowded street, trying to drag my family with me to get to a woman who was on a barge. And because there were so many people, if I kept pulling too hard, my family um, would get lost in the crowd. So I quit and I chose to stay with my family. And I watched the woman push the barge upstream. And then suddenly I found myself in a room. I was with this woman and we looked out the window, and it was a river with trees next to it, and the barge was parked there. And her and I were talking, and the feeling in this room, this was before my mother-in-law passed. This was actually the very first time I felt this. There was peace and love, but those words just don't describe it. Okay, I'm not sure where I left off before the phone call and the major crisis at the food trailer, but I know I was telling you about the vision with the woman of the barge. Um, the feeling of love and peace. Those words just don't describe what I felt. Um, State of unconditional love. Um, the warmth was amazing. But as we were in this room, and this feeling, this light, it was a light so intense, yet it didn't hurt my eyes. And it was emanating from a doorway. And I knew it was God. I was raised Christian, so to me it was God. And my guides call it the one. But she was talking to this being and went to the doorway to take a tray of tea. And we sat there and talked. And God, the one, told her that I was given a special gift and I would be able to help her. And she was excited. And she asked me to stay and help. And I said I had to take care of my family. Then I thought I was going to be loved less because I thought I had rejected God, which now the thought is laughable. Considering less than a year later, we moved back to Toledo, Ohio, and I met this woman. My husband and I were having problems, and I'm not a violent person. And he told me that all of the problems were all my fault. So I was standing in the mirror, trying to put on makeup, getting ready for work, just trying to deal with life. And when he said that, I turned around and broke his nose. That freaked me out so much that I just collapsed. I ended up in the psych ward at the local hospital where I met this woman. And in group therapy, we were learning to deal with our emotions. I tried to avoid her. She walked up, told me she had a feeling that she needed to talk to me. And we ended up sitting and talking in the kind of like the living room, common room, having tea. And it was the same room from my dream. The only difference is where I had seen the doorway with God was a doorway to a kitchenette, which was locked. And the window, instead of showing a tree lined riverbank, it was a tree lined street. She had trouble dealing with life because she had a mother who was an alcoholic and who had dropped her down the stairs, so she was having memory problems. It affected her in her adulthood. So I channeled her mother so her mother could apologize, which helped her out a lot. That night, I met her husband and told her she needed to get rid of him, that he was actually part of her issues. He was a very arrogant, controlling kind of man. He read my mom's palms. He read most people's palms. He read my husband's palm. Then he read my mom's palm and told her that she had quite a few psychic abilities and told her she was wasting it. She said, I didn't waste it. I used them to raise her. He read my hand and had no idea why I was there. He told me I was a leader. I had abilities. And I said I was there to help his wife. So she handed me her card and I put it in my pocket. I knew she was a minister. I didn't even have to look at the card because she was bringing souls to God in the vision. When I looked at the card, she was a minister of a non denominational church. So hopefully, some of the things that I gave Mary helped her cope with life. And then I guess that brings us to now. A lot of strange things happened in my life. There was a time when I was really depressed. The death of my brother, COVID, my oldest brother, the ordinary one, COVID, and um, a knee replacement all happened within a couple years, and that put me into shutdown mode almost. And so, you went down, baby. So I wasn't hearing voices anymore. In my head, there always seemed to be conversations going on. Like if you're in a crowded restaurant, and unless you really pay attention or concentrate on somebody's conversation, you don't really hear it. It's just background noise. That used to happen in my head all the time, and then it suddenly stopped. So out of boredom, I downloaded a Spirit Box app, and I thought I was talking to spirits. And through conversations over 3 years, I found out they weren't spirits, they were my guides. Um, they've given me names, but I won't share them here. Um, they're not names that most people would hear, although I've been told that they go by many names. I was directed to go to an immersion conference at Gaiasphere. So things fell into place. I went to this and I listened to one of the speakers was Sarah Bressman Cosme. She's a hypnotist. She uses the Dolores Cannon hypnotism, hypnotic therapy technique. And she talks to people's higher selves, other incarnations of this person. And she wrote a book, A Hypnotist Journey to Avalon. She also wrote Hypnotist Journey to Atlantis, which my friend had told me she remembered being in Atlantis. Pardon a minute. Okay, I think I have the dog settled down now. So, anyway, Miss Cosme's book, I couldn't find the one to Atlantis, the Hypnotist Journey to Atlantis, but I found the one to Avalon. And I read it and I found her absolutely amazing. So she mentioned Dragon Realm and other things. And reading through her books has brought back memories. And I now don't need the Spirit Box app to talk to my guides. But I will have a whole conversation several conversations in the book to explain what went on. Now, many of you know that I had a really good job in Toledo, Ohio. My husband was in Windsor. So I had my own place and I would only see him on the weekends. Well, one time when I was sleeping, what I thought was the ceiling fan turned on, but it turns out that it wasn't the ceiling fan. All I said when it turned on was, please turn that off. I don't like it because I don't like air blowing on me when I'm sleeping. And I realized it was a being swirling around the ceiling fan. And then she widened out so that she was going around the walls. Now, if you've ever seen the movie Abyss, there's a water creature in there. It was kind of like that, but a pretty woman's face, just head, and long flowing hair, but it was made out of air, not water. And she went around and she stopped at eye level. I was laying in bed watching her go round and round, and she asked me why I could see her. But I heard her in my head, not out loud. And I said, I'm not sure. Okay, sorry. It's a nice day out, so the neighbor dogs bark at anything that moves, so my dogs bark at them. Anyway, so this being is swirling around my room, ends up stopping um, in front of my face and asked me why I can see her. And I said, I'm not sure. Why are you here? She said she was an elemental tied to the land. She didn't have a word for what we would call her. She said the closest thing that I would have in my language would be sprite. So I went to sleep. The next morning, oh, I guess that night, she asked what I was, and I said, I'm human. And she said, you have a human body, but not your soul. So since then, I have learned I'm actually from a different realm, hence conversations with Tao later. This is going to sound really, I guess it doesn't matter. Okay, I have learned that my soul is actually from Hollow Earth. I am actually tied to this earth. My best friend, who is also my guide, is a dragon. They are not from Earth, but they came here. And when they were rejected by humans that they were trying to help, they made a nest in Hollow Earth. J.R.R. Tolkien called it Middle Earth. So you'll have to read the book to find out the rest of the story, which I am working on now, and then I'll finish working on Tao's story. I've learned a lot about the story I started to write as a kid was Rismak's story. Rismak was not me. She was actually one of the reasons that their kind came to Earth. The dragon is actually an extraterrestrial who came to Earth to help humans and found out that through the ages humans rejected them. So they made as he calls it, a nest in Hollow Earth. And I was from Hollow Earth, and we were really close. We share a heart. So hence Tao and her dragon that helps her share a heart. So no more reading boring stories. I'm just going to tell you the story. And then you have to buy the book to see how it works out. Okay. See you guys later.